Bruises and Battle Wounds by When Icarus Flies. A Batman All Media Types fanfic, tagged with the warning, graphic depictions of violence. With the relationship tag, Stephanie Brown and Jason Todd, and additional tags for Jason Todd is Red Hood, Protective Jason Todd has issues, Stephanie Brown is spoiler, Jason Todd centric, Stephanie Brown centric, Stephanie Brown needs a hug, Stephanie Brown and Jason Todd are siblings, hurt/comfort, injury, and alternative universe. This is part 1 in Siblings, I guess. Summary. Jason was starting to get quite annoyed with spoiler. The alleged vigilante had been following him around for too long for Jason not to be suspicious of her. Something had to be done. Jason has started to get quite annoyed with spoiler. The alleged vigilante had been following him around for too long for Jason to not be suspicious of her. Something had to be done. Okay, let me get this straight. You kill all these people, make a bunch of rules, and for what? Because let's be honest, you're not getting a lot out of this. Something had ended up being coffee. Jason had ended up cornering spoiler, who had refused to answer any questions. Unfortunately for him, she would not be any use to him unconscious, so he had to find another way for her to answer his questions. He was fairly certain he would have been able to get her to one of his safe houses without anyone noticing, but then Batman would have the location of one of his safe houses, and he doubted any amount of threats would make spoiler answer, and Jason wasn't one for torture, especially not to someone who didn't have any major faults other than annoying him. Coffee was a compromise. Once Jason had decided torture and fighting were off the table, he was left with bribery. Spoiler had agreed to talk. I'll talk, not answer any questions, and not owe you any favors. Once Jason had agreed to buy her a coffee. Her request. What? Jason had been trying to figure out a way for Spoiler to answer his questions without him having to ask them, and was caught off guard. Why are you doing this? She gestured to him, his helmet, his bulletproof vest, the emblem on it. To his credit, Jason did think about answering honestly, then scrapped the idea, because why should he answer her questions when she won't answer his? Money. It was why most crime lords got their business. But apparently it wasn't a good lie, because when Spoiler heard it, she scoffed. You would earn twice as much if you started screwing everyone over. Right. Jason had to take control of this conversation, and quick. He didn't know how long Spoiler would stay to talk, and he wanted to get something out of this conversation that was undoubtedly ruining his reputation. How about this? Jason started. I'll answer one of your questions, and in return, you answer one of mine. There was a moment of silence while Spoiler considered it. Okay. Jason felt a rush of satisfaction as she agreed. But I get to ask the first question. The satisfaction came crashing back down. No. Yes. No. I'll answer, then you'll leave. I'm asking the first question. I'll answer and then you'll leave. Spoiler mimicked, annoyed. They glared at each other, stuck in a stalemate. I won't leave without answering your question. You're a crime lord. I'm not gonna trust you. And I should trust you? Yes, Spoiler replied, sticking her chin out. I give you my word. Jason ground his teeth together. This conversation was not going the way he had hoped. Fine, he spat out. If she did leave, he would just hunt her down. Spoiler seemed to pick up his mood change, and scooted further along the edge of the building before answering. What are you getting out of this? Why protect the people of Crime Alley? That's 2 questions. Jason couldn't see under Spoiler's mask, but he had the feeling she was glaring at him. There was a pause while she thought about her question. She must have picked up that it was unlikely that Jason would answer more than one, so the question she chose to ask was important. Why do you have rules that benefit the people of Crime Alley, but inconvenience you? Jason could tell Jason could tell her that he cared about the people of Crime Alley. True, but not the whole truth. He could tell her that he wanted to piss off Batman by being a better protector than him. Also true. He could tell her he was lulling the people into a sense of security, letting them trust him before turning it around on them. He guessed it was true? If his plan works, which it will, the Joker will be out in no time. And that's not good for anyone. Is it so hard to believe I care about the people of Crime Alley? Is that your question? The purple vigilante asked, annoyance creeping into her voice. Because it's quite easy to answer. No. This conversation was very frustrating. It's not. You still have to answer mine. I have those rules in place because it's easier to get my job done when people trust me. He settled on. Not completely heartless, but not weak. It didn't give away any information about his operations either. My turn. Why did Batman send you and not Robin to get information on me? Jason had been puzzled over that information for a while. Spoiler could fight, and wasn't too bad at sneaking around, but the Boy Wonder was better than her. The question seemed to confuse her, though. What? I asked why Batman sent you and not Robin to— Yeah, I heard the question. I don't work for Batman? Her voice was twinged in doubt, as if she wasn't sure of the answer. Right. Jason didn't believe her. Honestly. She sounded much more sure of herself now. I've never even met Batman. Jason was becoming less sure that he was right. Then why are you following me? She huffed and turned the other way. I already answered your question. Fine, we both get one more question. She turned back around. Okay. Jason had come to realize that he didn't have the upper hand in this conversation. He wanted more information from Spoiler than she wanted from him. One more question, he promised himself. Then this conversation ends. He couldn't allow Spoiler to gauge how much he wanted to know about her. Why do you purposefully annoy Batman? Surely it would be easier to get your job done if you flew under his radar. Jason noted that she had carefully phrased a second clause in the sentence as a sentence and not a question. They must both want this to be over quickly. The upside of the question is that it confirms Spoiler didn't work for Batman. Nothing flew under his radar. It's not my fault he can't mind his own business. Spoiler seemed to think that this was an acceptable answer, as she gestured for him to ask his own question. Jason decided to ask the question he wanted to ask previously. Why are you following me? She shrugged. I wanted to ask you a question. There was a beat of silence while Jason processed what she had just said. He had a gut feeling she was telling the truth. He fucking wasted the question on that? Spoiler roused him from his thoughts by standing up. Thanks for the coffee, she said cheerily, waving before disappearing over the edge of the rooftop. Jason didn't bother replying. In all fairness, Spoiler did seem to leave Jason alone after that. He had answered her question, and it appeared she was content to get into her own fights and leave him out of it. Not that she needed any help. Apparently, Spoiler won every fight she was in. Not that Jason was looking out for her. If she wanted to die trying to save people, then it was up to her. Not any of his business. He was just making sure she wouldn't mess up any of his plans. If she did start working for Batman, it would cause some complications. It was fine. He was fine. Everything was fine. Jason got there just in time to yank Spoiler away from a bullet that would have gone through her ribs and punctured her lung. Jason had been following her using the city's security cameras. Normal stalker stuff, when he saw her get surrounded by some of Black Mask's thugs. There was a lot of them, too many of them for her to fight off. Still, he had thought, she'll talk her way out of it. But she didn't. More accurately, she didn't succeed. He watched as she held up her hands placatingly, then switched tactics to appear cocky and confident. Sure to win. Neither worked, and before long she was throwing punches. What's the saying? Brought a knife to a gunfight? Well, it was safe to say that Spoiler hadn't even bothered to bring a knife. If Jason still had any doubt about whether Spoiler was working for Batman, it was quelled now. No associate of his would be so poorly prepared. "She'll be fine," he assured himself. "And if she's not, well, at least she put up a good fight." She did put up a good fight. No one came. He watched. No one came for the vigilante who was alone. No one came for the teenager fighting for her life. Batman didn't show up for her. Jason was there before he knew it. The fight ended rather quickly after Jason showed up. His reputation still seemed remarkably intact despite the coffee incident. In under 10 minutes, 5 of the men lay dead, and the others had fled back to wherever they had come from. Spoiler was leaning against a wall, clutching her side. Blood was seeping through her uniform, and if Jason had to guess, he would say that she had been a second too slow, and a bullet had hit her. The good news was that she wasn't dead. Yet. "Come on," Jason grunted, grabbing her arm and marching her down the alleyway. Spoiler stumbled a bit, trying to keep up with him, but she didn't resist. Jason was forming a plan in his head. He didn't know if anyone saw the fight, but news travels fast, and he had no doubt there would soon be rumors about him and Spoiler working together. She would become known as an associate of the Red Hood, and thus a weak spot to exploit. If that did happen, Jason would do nothing and just let her die at the hands of Black Mask's goons. But it would probably be kinder to just shoot her right here, right now. He didn't hurt kids. Spoiler was clearly young. Younger than him, at least. Not that that's saying much. He could help her when someone inevitably tried to use her to get to him. But that would just confirm their suspicions. Besides, he didn't think either of them would be very happy about having to work together. The best path of action would be to stop the rumors from getting out. That meant hunting down the goons who had escaped from the fight and finding out if anyone else had been watching. He could check the security camera, and... The security camera, fuck. Jason cursed his bad luck. If there was a security camera, then Batman would be able to get that footage. He would see Jason helping Spoiler, and them leaving together. He would assume they knew each other. He would try to get Spoiler on his side, or try to get Spoiler to tell him about Jason. He couldn't let that happen. "Where do you live?" Jason figured it would be better to wait until Spoiler wasn't actively bleeding out to explain why they had to work together, and why she should absolutely not trust Batman ever. Besides, he doubted she would be particularly skilled at stitching wounds, especially with how much blood she had lost. "I'm not telling you where I live." Jason honestly didn't expect that. "What?" She huffed, arranging her posture as Jason reached to a standstill. "I don't trust you, so no, I'm not telling you where I live." "I just saved your life." "Yes." There was a tinge of guilt in her voice. "Thank you. But I don't want to be known as a crime lord's henchwoman." Jason laughed disbelievingly. "Are you kidding me? You're gonna go home and what?" He gestured at her bleeding side. "Stitch that up yourself?" "Yes?" She didn't sound very sure of herself at all. "And I hate to break it to you, but by this time tomorrow, half of Crime Alley will think that Red Hood and Spoiler are on good terms." Spoiler tensed. She must know Jason was telling the truth. There was nothing either of them can do about it. "I'm not gonna be known as someone who would be on good terms with a crime lord?" Jason was starting to get pissed off. He didn't have to show up. He could have just let her die. But he didn't, and now his reputation would be in shambles this time next week, and she didn't even want his help. "Fine," something in his head snarled, green coloring his vision. He dropped Spoiler's arm. She stumbled back a bit, crashing into the wall and staying there, leaning on it for support. "If you want to bleed out in some random alley, don't let me disturb you," he snapped. "But don't count on me to help next time you get in above your head." He stalked out of the alleyway, leaving Spoiler bleeding out, leaning against the wall of an alley. 2 months later, Jason was still annoyed every time he thought of Spoiler. He carefully pushed all questions as to what happened to her and why she hadn't been seen to the back of his mind. but it was fine. She hadn't shown up since, so she must have listened to what he said. He was still on edge, though, waiting for a purple-clad vigilante to show up and ruin things. Or maybe she was just waiting for injuries to heal, and she would carry on patrolling. His henchman had noticed something was off, that every time Spoiler's name was brought up, he snapped at them to shut up. Other than that, things continued as normal. Crime Alley said nothing about him and Spoiler working together. Batman hadn't pushed his luck and gone into Crime Alley. The calm before the storm, his mind ever so helpfully supplied. Jason was meeting up with a smaller gang who, apparently, had something that would be very valuable to him. The invite had come about an hour and a half before, and although it said he should come at his earliest convenience, Jason was just leaving now. He didn't have the patience for whatever bullshit this was, and if he was going to kill someone, he would rather do it now, while he had nothing else going on. He stomped into the warehouse, opening the door with a bang. He hadn't brought any backup, but he never really needed it. Besides, if it was a trap, it was poorly set. The goons flinched when Jason walked in. He strode into the middle of the warehouse, where they were all gathered. He didn't need to look around to know that the rest of the warehouse was empty. There was a stillness in the air that wouldn't be there otherwise. Well? The helmet made him sound more annoyed than he was, but it had its desired effect, and the goons closest to Jason edged away. We have a gift for you," said someone Jason labeled as Goon Number 1. He was clearly the leader of the small group. There were only 5 of them, but he still spoke cautiously, aware that if they fucked this up, Jason would smear the concrete with their brains. Right. Jason doubted whatever gift they had gotten him would be very useful. Then the goons, who had previously been standing in a sort of semicircle, parted, and Jason felt his heart stop. The person sitting on the floor was either wearing a very good copy of Spoiler's suit, or she was, in fact, Spoiler. Jason found the former unlikely. Taking a closer look at the goons, Jason could see that they all had some bruises, some cuts. She must have picked up a knife somewhere. The puzzle pieces began to come together and form an unpleasant picture. Bullet wounds take over a month to heal. Spoiler wasn't stupid. She must have known that going out again would make it worse. Besides, she had more injuries, so she had stayed home and let them heal. She stayed longer than strictly necessary, either making sure it was healed or training so that she wouldn't be caught in a situation like that again. Or, perhaps, Miss Spoiler simply doesn't have a death wish. A British voice in Jason's head chimed in. She patrolled again, for the first time today, but was spotted by these guys. None of them were badly injured, which made Jason think there were more of them when they found her. The news about Spoiler and Red Hood must have reached further than Jason thought it did, and the goons must have seen it as an opportunity to undermine Jason. Now, we can come to an agreement about your, sidekick. Goon 1 spoke, while Jason examined Spoiler. Her suit was ripped by what must have been knife slashes, and he was pretty sure she had been shot again, though the bullet would have just grazed her. The sluggish flow of blood from her leg would have been much faster if the bullet had hit her properly. It was fair to assume that she had some fractured or broken bones, and definitely bruises. She was sitting on her knees, but Jason could see her hands were chained behind her back, and from what he could see, her feet were as well. Her head was hung, but Jason could see her breathing. She was conscious. That was good. The longer Jason examined Spoiler, the more green it affected his vision. Goon 1 continued to talk, but Jason wasn't listening. His self-control was wearing thin, and he forced himself to tune back into the conversation. She was hard to capture. The sentence was punctuated with a laugh. You've got a live one. Just listen, Jason urged himself, wrestling self-control back from the pit. You might find out something useful. The spoiler lifted up her head, and Jason's self-control snapped. The green colored his vision, and the leader fell to the ground with a bang, a bullet wound in his forehead. The other 4 took a second to process what happened, but by the time they reached for their weapons, it was too late. The pit purred in satisfaction at the sight of them strewn on the ground. Jason turned around, furious, facing away from the bodies, away from Spoiler, and began walking. He had to calm down. He didn't want to know what the pit would do when faced with an injured vigilante. He took some deep breaths while the pit receded. As the roaring in his ears died down, he became more aware of Spoiler's hitched breathing. He spun back around and marched over to Spoiler. She recoiled slightly, stopping him in his tracks. He didn't mean to frighten her, but walking up to someone in a vulnerable position after shooting and killing 5 people would do that, especially after what happened last time they met. Jason started walking forward again, this time slower, and he held up his hands when he was near her. Her mask was off. She didn't have domino on underneath. She didn't have a domino on underneath it, and she had a black eye and a bruise forming along her jaw. A gag was stopping her from speaking. It was crudely made, but effective. Blonde hair had fallen into her face and around her shoulders. She had sky blue eyes, a similar color to what Jason's were before everything. They were currently fixed on him, tracking his movement, fear shining bright. He shook himself out of his thoughts. "I'm gonna take the chains off, okay?" Jason waited until she nodded before moving closer. It was easy to pick the locks. He was sure she could have done it herself if she hadn't had 3 broken fingers. Once he was done with the chains, Jason unsheathed a knife, opting to cut the gag off instead of trying to untie it. When he brought it out, Spoiler recoiled a little, before stilling when he brought it up to her face. She wasn't scared anymore, at least. Not as scared as she was before, but she seemed to understand that Jason was going to help her, not make it worse. When he was done, Jason took a step back. "Thanks." Spoiler's voice was raspy. Jason was about to turn around and leave, but he stopped when he saw Spoiler limping. Right, he remembered. The bullet wound. Jason watched her struggle for a minute before she noticed and looked back up at him, glaring. "Weird way to thank someone who just saved your ass." "Weird way to rescue someone who shouldn't count on your help," she bit back. Jason sighed. As much as he wanted to, he didn't think he could leave her here. "Are you going to accept my help this time, or do I need to dump you in another alley?" Perhaps it was an asshole-ish thing for Jason to say, but he was still pretty annoyed about how things went down the last time. Spoiler glared at him for a minute before relenting. I would appreciate the help." Jason asked no further questions, instead walking back to her and helping her walk out of the warehouse. "I could just pick you up, you know." "You are not picking me up." Jason had managed to scrounge up another blanket, making a total of 2, and he laid it over Stephanie, along with the other one. "Might as well know my name. I can't imagine it'd take you long to find it anyway." They were in one of Jason's safe houses. Stephanie had insisted on going there instead of her apartment. "Still don't trust me?" Jason asked with a grating laugh. Spoiler had huffed, and after a minute she answered, "I don't want my mom to see me." They made it to the safe house with minimal issues, but by the time they got there, Stephanie was half unconscious from blood loss. Jason had done his best to get her to drink water while he treated her various injuries with what he had available. He still had to carry her to the couch when he was done. She would be okay. None of the injuries were bad. It was just the sheer volume of them that had caused this. She must have put up a good fight. Jason looked down at her and knew that this wasn't going to be the end of their working together. Whether they liked it or not, they were sort of team now. Red Hood and Spoiler. Spoiler and Red Hood. Some small part of Jason grinned in delight and chirped, "Dream Team!" Notes. Personally, I'm very fond of the whole Bat gets sold to Jason, and then he takes care of them thing. But I almost always see it as either Tim or Dick. So I had fun seeing what it would be like with Steph instead. Also, I thought it would be a good way to get the story to where I want it to be. Speaking of, this is going to be a series. Might take a while for the next part to come out, but it's happening. And reader notes, I absolutely love them. They are my favorite. Also, I apologize for the plethora of noises in the background, because it is 4 o'clock, and Brother Dearest is about to go to work. Also, because I know the art piece that's gonna go with this when I post it on YouTube, I apologize, because it's gonna fly by, it's gonna go so quickly, you're not gonna be able to, like, read any of what's happening. I think I might wait on posting this thing on YouTube until I have both parts. I think that might work better. We'll see. The following are blooper moments. Brother Dearest just waking up for work. It's a miracle. Or perhaps... Fuck.